When I was 26, I almost died. The word almost makes it seem as if it wasn't real, but it was, and I'm grateful to God and one very special soul and his or her family for my life. Let me back up a little bit in my story. It's the summer of 1992, and I've just turned 18, but my body is feeling old. I have swelling in 90% of my joints, and the doctors diagnosed me with rheumatoid arthritis. A story I've told in a previous video, and which I will link at the end. The doctors pumped me with anti-inflammatory medications, but no matter what I take, nothing works. There was so much pain in my body, I thought I was dying. But nothing came close to what would happen in the next 7 years. I'm referred to a specialist who runs a million tests and decides to put me on a stronger medication, a couple of meds that are used for chemotherapy. I start taking them, and just 2 days later, my doctor calls me back to say that I should stop immediately. Because after getting back the test results, it seems that my liver is not functioning properly, and I can't take any of those medications. He refers me to a liver specialist who, after many more tests, tells me that my liver is damaged and that within the next 7 to 8 years, I will need a liver transplant. The truth is that I didn't believe him. It's hard to talk about it even now because telling a not even 20-year-old who thought she had her whole life ahead of her that if she doesn't get a new liver, she might not make it. Well, I don't have to explain how I felt. The term devastating news doesn't really apply, as it's much worse. I decide to take matters into my own hands, and my parents take me to see a naturopath to at least deal with the arthritis because I couldn't take any meds due to my liver. And that naturopath saved me in a way. He helped me get rid of the daily chronic arthritic pain, but my liver, it was too damaged. You know, sometimes in your darkest times, there's that light that shines at the end of the tunnel. Looking back, I see it so much clearer. I met my husband a year after that. It was as if God had sent him, and he accepted me as I was, limping, with little physical strength, and with the possibility of not living that long. But he loved me as I was, and we got married a couple of years later. My arthritis was much better, but I could see little things getting worse. I was getting more jaundice, bloated, which made people ask if I was pregnant. Something you should never ask a woman, by the way. I wasn't pregnant, even though I wanted to be a mother more than anything in the world. I was ill. My liver was getting worse. And 2 years later, the same doctor said to me that they're putting me on a transplant list, and all we can do is wait. Y2K comes around. There were cell phones at the time, but not as readily as now. So when I get higher up the transplant list, they give me a pager so they can contact me at any time. Not sure if you know how it works, but usually transplants happen after a person is declared brain dead, which means their organs are working, but their brain is not. Unless the person has signed a card that says they are willing to donate their organs, they have to ask their families in the worst moment of their lives to donate their loved one's organs so they can save many other lives, knowing that their loved one will never be there again. I've often thought about this moment when the hospital asks my donor's family if they would be willing to donate his or her organs. I'm so grateful they said yes. And on August 12, 2000, I was awakened by a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning as they had found a match. It's hard to imagine what one feels at that moment. My first reaction was fear, followed by panic, followed by my husband telling me it's going to be okay, with lots of tears, followed by my parents picking us up and driving us downtown to the hospital, and then being wheeled into the operating room just to see my grandmother showing up at the last minute. Even until this day, that story makes me cry. You see, it was a very long surgery, and I barely remember anything except all the acts of kindness. Since we had left so early in the morning, my mom didn't wake my grandmother up to tell her we were going to the hospital. Remember, no texts or cell phones. My sister was in Europe traveling. So when my sister called my parents at home in the morning just to say hi, and they didn't answer, she kept calling and calling. And when they still didn't answer, she knew something was wrong. So she called my grandmother, who then tried calling my parents as well, and no answer. So my grandmother decides to call the hospital, which confirms that I was in fact admitted. And this is where I always cry. My 75-year-old grandmother takes a taxi to the subway station, rides over 20 stations all the way downtown, and makes it right when they're wheeling me in. I hadn't cried until then, but when I saw her, I started crying so hard that the nurses had to calm me down inside the surgery room. I was really close to my grandmother, and I think the fear of never seeing her or any of my family again hit me at that moment. It's strange what we remember in those moments. Instead of remembering the bad, we remember those acts of kindness, like my family and friends praying outside my room, or a nurse washing my hair in the ICU. Never did a hair wash felt so good. Or my sister, who was so far away, praying, begging God to heal me, and that if any fever or infection happens, let it happen to her and not to me. You know, that night, she got a very high fever. But I only found out about the story a few weeks later, to which I told her to never do that again, because I never want anybody else to be harmed. But we've always felt she got that fever instead of me, and her body was strong enough to fight it. I recovered fully, and after 3 months, I felt like a different person, with so much gratitude. Grateful to God, grateful to life, to my family and friends, and of course to my donor. I never found who it was. I wrote a letter to their family, but they never replied. But I understand. I don't know if I would have in their situation. It's been over 21 years. I'm still being monitored, but I know I got a second chance at life. And I never take that for granted, not even once. Even when I feel down, I try to remember what I've been through and how telling my story can help others feel that they're not alone in this world. Since then, I've found other things that have helped me, and I talk about them in this video right here.